This is Dr. Chris's Radio Horror Program at 91.3 FM, WCAW in Worcester, Massachusetts, and recorded interview with comic book artist Marcelo Ferreira. Did I have it the first time? Yeah, I did it? Okay, yeah, there you go. Who is now currently the artist on Morbius the Living Vampire. As of issue 2, issue 3 will be out soon. He has brought back Morbius alongside his co-conspirators on the book, and he's on the show now to talk to us about Morbius the Living Vampire and what had brought him to it. Thank you for coming on the show with us, Marcelo.
Thanks for having me, Chris. How are you doing?
Good. How did you get involved with Morbius?
I got the invite for the book. Let me see. We are in late 2019 now. I guess it was something like 5 months ago or 6 months ago, something like that. I was leaving. I was finishing my work on Absolute Carnage versus Deadpool. So that's when I got a call from my editors, telling about the new project, the new Morbius ongoing, and I got offered the book. And well, of course, I said yes instantly because to me the character is so interesting. He's from the Spider-Man universe. He's a vampire. What's bad about Morbius? Nothing.
When that movie comes out, we'll certainly find out for sure.
Well, do you have your expectations as a fan about that movie, huh?
Well, after what happened with Venom and how awful that was treated, I'm sorry, but if you watch that movie and you go read anything about the origin of Venom and any Venom comic book written by Donny Cates recently, Donny Cates, they're so separate and so different. It is disgusting. At least with Marvel's Spider-Man, Sony's original Spider-Man trilogy, a little bit of the Amazing Spider-Man 2 films that they did, the core basics of Spider-Man are pretty much there. The costume's there. The villains may or may not be there. But the fundamentals of who Spider-Man is and what he stands for and what he is as a character, why people love him so much, are pretty much there. With that Venom movie, it's like we just want to make a profit.
Yeah,
we don't
weird.
care how we do it.
Yeah, maybe you can think they're, taking more risks with the villains. Maybe I don't know.
Jared Leto, whatever. He's an okay actor sometimes. His Joker sucked. I'm sorry, his Joker was just terrible.
I agree.
Okay,
Sorry,
but he is a decent actor. He's an Academy Award-winning actor. Does he look like Michael Morbius? Yeah. I mean, he's got some look to it. So we'll wait and see. What was your first exposure to Morbius, and where does your art style come from?
Oh my God, my first exposure to Morbius. It's difficult to remember because it was a long time ago. I've been a comic fan for what, over 30 years. Oh my God.
Well, how old? So how old are you exactly? I mean, did you read him in comics or did you find out about him on the Spider-Man animated series?
Oh no, in comics definitely because I'm already 40.
Oh,
Don't tell anyone. But
I'm almost there, so don't worry.
all right. So in comics definitely. It was back in the 80s, from those comics. Basically the classic Morbius villain, classic Spider-Man, all that good stuff. And you asked also about my art style. My art style. It's a very interesting question. We as artists, I think we build our styles ever since we become fans. We start observing the artists we like, and to me, the very very first influence was John Byrne. I remember myself as a 9-year-old copying John Byrne's comic books, and when I became a teenager, it was Jim Lee definitely. Yeah, and now. In more recent years, the guys I like. Which names can I tell you? Olivier Coipel for sure. Oh my God, so many guys. Why did I remember Olivier? I think he's so good. There's a Brazilian guy around these. His name is RB Silva. He's also very good. So there you go. We keep being influenced all the time with all the art coming up. I think this is what kind of built what I do now.
Previously, you'd worked on some non-horror books like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Deadpool, Back to the Future, Call of Duty. What made you want to get into the world of Marvel horror? Was it just specifically the character of Morbius?
Well, these books you mentioned was they were pretty much my all my IDW books, and Call of Duty was from Dark Horse. So that was the kind of the beginning of my career. I started working for Marvel 1 year ago. That was just 1 year ago when I broke in Marvel. So I guess I was kind of naturally pushed to that direction because my first work on Marvel was Spider Force, a miniseries tied to Spider Geddon, you know. So and it was a book that had those vampire villains, that. Oh my God, what's the name of that family? The family of Morlun? Is that right, Morlun?
Oh, you're talking about the energy vampires, the ones that attacked Spider-Man in the Spider-Verse?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Morlun. Yeah, he's been. They're considered to be vampires. They're not like alongside Dracula or Morbius or Blade, but yeah, they're considered to be vampires in their own way because they are energy sucking vampires, and they
Yeah.
feed
So
on
yeah,
spider totems.
that's right. Yeah, and that was my first book. It already had that kind of mood to it. It was a book that happened in an abandoned space station kind of thing. So I had to draw all those shadowy backgrounds, and we had that vampire woman in the comic. And so apparently people liked that book because after that I was invited to do the Punisher War of the Realms tie-in miniseries. So again, we had big monsters, lots of fangs going on. It was a Punisher, a very down to the ground character, but he was fighting all those monsters from Asgard. Not from Asgard, but from the Asgardian realms. And after that one, then came Absolute Carnage versus Deadpool. So kind of a very gory book too. And I don't know. I mean, in Marvel so far, I guess I've been naturally tracing a path through these types of books that carry lots of monsters, lots of blood and guts flying around. And I have a great time drawing that kind of stuff. I like doing that. So maybe that shows in the final art. I'm just guessing here, but
Where are you guys going with Morbius, and what are you trying to acknowledge that has come before? The neat thing I want to point out, by the way, is that in issue 3, which comes out in January, you have Spider-Man showing up, which is funny because I pointed out on Twitter back in the 90s when the Midnight Suns Morbius book was launched, Spider-Man showed up in the third issue of that as well. Did you guys resist trying to put Spider-Man in the book so soon, or was that a Marvel decree, or was that your own decision?
well, unfortunately, Chris, I don't know that answer because we would have to ask Vita. We haven't talked about this. I haven't talked about this with them. But yeah, maybe it's not coincidental. That's an interesting question. I'm gonna ask my editors and also ask Vita. But I mean, I was definitely expecting Spider-Man to show up at some point, because in issue 3, you guys are going to read. Well, Spider-Man is always a brighter character. So he makes that the counterpoint to Morbius. Morbius is trying to, he's inside his personal struggle with he's trying to get rid of those powers that he calls a curse. He doesn't want that anymore. So Spider-Man comes in. I don't want to tell what happens in number 3, but you guys should definitely check that out. He has an interest. It's an interesting. It's more than a cameo. It's more than that. He starts being like a supporting character, I can say, for this first arc, and it's gonna be very interesting. It's gonna be fun. I bet you guys. I think you guys are gonna like. I reading the scripts when they come to me before I draw them. Reading them as not just as an artist but as a fan. I'm liking what Vita is coming up with.
Are you guys going to be delving deep into other parts of the Marvel vampire canon, such as Blade or Dracula? Of course, Blade is running around now with the Avengers, and Dracula has been in the Avengers as well. And Marvel seems to be gearing up for more horror-related stuff. We have the Doctor Strange movie coming out with the horror connection. We have the Blade movie coming from Marvel's Cinematic Universe for the first time, and we have a Morbius movie coming. So Marvel seems to be getting into their horror stuff once again, which is fantastic. But are we going to have more of a connection to Marvel's horror within your Morbius book?
Well, oh my God, this is where I don't know how much I can tell you guys.
Well, okay, how about this? How about this? Oh, hold on. So
All right.
don't forget, Previews is published up till about March. So whatever you're allowed to talk about is up until, I think, about February or March, considering what Diamond Previews book has already released. So that's pretty much your cutoff.
Yeah, but let me tell you this. I think every Marvel fan slash horror fan can expect lots of fun for the next year. I mean, there is an evident movement from Marvel towards the horror characters again. So yeah, I think it's gonna get expanded, and I have seen some stuff that you guys are gonna see in the coming months. It's very good. It's very good. It's very exciting. I think you guys are gonna have a very good time with Marvel and its horror genre.
Where Morbius comes in, have you read a lot of the previous books before and his previous stories? Sometimes it seems like people, artists, and writers don't pay attention to continuity, and sometimes they do. Are you guys trying to strictly stick to previous continuity?
From what I'm reading, from what Vita is writing for Morbius, I feel there is a maybe what they're trying to do here is to reset the character. I mean, I don't know so much stuff in before it comes to me, as you guys might think. But I'm feeling that at least this first arc is going to serve to kind of redefine the character and prepare him for one maybe at least one more year of stories, and also prepare him to tie him to the rest of this kind of renaissance of horror in Marvel. You read the book and you see he's basically in the middle of a big struggle, and I'm guessing I still haven't read the conclusion of this first arc, but I'm guessing we're gonna see Morbius coming out of it stronger and redefined for the next, I don't know, whole bunch of stories Marvel wants to tell using him. I mean, I'm liking what I see. It has kind of a break from the previous takes on the character, no doubt about it. I've actually heard and also read a few fans kind of not liking the new direction, and I respect that. I understand that, but I would say stick around for what you guys are going to see. I think it's exciting. I think you're going to like it.
When it comes to vampires in general, what's a vampire story? It can be a movie, TV series, or book that stands out to you.
First thing for me, when people say vampire, I mean, I don't know if I'm being too traditional here, but I love Nosferatu. The German movie.
Yep.
To me, that's scary as hell. Still a movie made in the 1930s. Am I right?
Yes. No. Dracula was 1933. Nosferatu was in the 20s.
1920s, almost 100 years old. So to me, that movie is almost. I remember first time I saw it. I was alone in my living room. I shouldn't be. I didn't know what was coming, but it was scary as hell. That very old movie, silent movie, and that creepy vampire. To me, it's still scary as hell. And I have also read the classic Dracula novel. I still have it. I read it at least 2 times. I love it. Still love it. I still love also the oh my God, the 1991 Dracula. I think it's 1991.
Yeah, Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Yeah, I still love that movie. Although people have some criticisms to it, I understand. But I know maybe because I saw it when I was very young, it still sticks to me. I guess I'm more of a classic kind of guy. I even like Bela Lugosi.
What's funny is that once there was an issue of Spectacular Spider-Man, they were trying to redo the story The Kid Who Collects Spider-Man, which was about a kid dying of cancer who wanted to meet Spider-Man and sends a letter to the Daily Bugle, and Spider-Man shows up, tells him his origin story, and then reveals his identity to the kid because the kid unfortunately is going to be dying of cancer soon, so he's going to take the secret of his identity to his grave. Years later, they did the same thing with this Kid Who Collects Spider-Man. It's a kid who's actually kind of like... I think he's got cerebral palsy. No, I don't know his disease, but unfortunately he's wheelchair bound. He's not able to speak. He's all kind of crippled up, and Morbius is drinking his blood. But Morbius shows up as like a Nosferatu-like vampire. And it was like a one-off story. It was like really kind of dumb because it's something like Morbius would never do, and he doesn't even look like Morbius. But Spider-Man calls him Morbius, but he looks like a Nosferatu vampire. You know what I mean? I don't know if you've ever read that story, but it's actually one of my least favorite Morbius stories ever.
I haven't read. I never knew about that one. I want to read it now.
Don't. What you should read is Vampire Tales, which was a collection of. It's a collection of vampire stories written by classic horror authors and writers of Marvel from back in the 70s when Morbius was first introduced, right after his famous Amazing Spider-Man number 101. And they're all very like dark and gothic and very adult too, by the way. There's sometimes nudity, there's sometimes a lot of blood. I don't know if they're ever considered to be in canon or not, but they're very cool tales and they've always stuck with me. And Marvel published them finally in a trade paperback format in the early 2010s.
Okay, I gotta get a hold of that one too. Yeah, now that I'm in the book, I'm trying to catch up with stuff from the past that I missed. Yeah, okay, I'll add that one to my list.
I highly recommend it. It's definitely worth checking out. You also worked on Ghostbusters, I saw.
On Ghostbusters, yeah. It was a book that was out in January? Yeah, January this year. Yeah, Ghostbusters, that's also tied to this horror kind of thing that we're talking about. It's wow, there's a pattern being drawn here for me.
Did you enjoy Ghostbusters?
Yes, that's also, being a comic book artist sometimes is actually lots of fun because we get the chance to work with all these characters that we're big fans of when we were children watching the TV cartoons. And Ghostbusters for me was also a property that I was a big fan of. I watched the cartoons. Here they were daily on TV. Daily, the movies, definitely, the classic movies. I also worked on Back to the Future. That was, I saw those movies hundreds of times. I also worked on Transformers. I'm right now looking at my 90 plus Transformers collection while I say this. But yeah, Ghostbusters definitely was one of my favorites too.
Well, we appreciate you coming on for a little bit to talk about Morbius the Living Vampire. I've been a big fan of this character my whole life. My actually first introduction to him was Todd McFarlane did a 2-part storyline in his original Adjective-less Spider-Man book in the 90s before he created Spawn. Spider-Man had to put the black costume back on, the threaded one, not Venom. And he found out that Morbius was kidnapping homeless people and drinking their blood. And the artwork was just so horrific by Todd McFarlane. And that led to the republication, the reprinting of the 3-issue, 3-arm, the 6-arm Spider-Man storyline where he actually meets Morbius for the first time in that Amazing Spider-Man 101. And those were reprinted in Marvel Tales or something like that. So that was my big first introduction to him. And then I hated the cartoon in the 90s, the way they portrayed him. But I've always been a big fan of the character. And I do have a copy of Amazing Spider-Man number 101, the first appearance of Morbius. Do you have a copy yourself?
Oh, yeah. No, my brother had. We had at home, but it was my brother's.
Oh, so no.
So I couldn't grab that one for me. I don't know if he still has those comic books, that comic book especially. But I remember reading it. You said it, and it just clicked to me. I said, yeah, of course. That first appearance by McFarlane, it was amazing the way he drew the character. I loved it.
Again, Marcelo, thank you so much for coming on the show to talk about Morbius the Living Vampire revival.
Well, I thank you so much, Chris. Thanks for having me on the show, and I hope you and everybody out there appreciates this first arc of, at least this first arc of, I'm saying first arc because that's the one I'm working so far. Don't know about after issue 5. Let's see, but definitely until issue 5, I'll be on the book, and I'm very excited for you guys to read the story until the end. It's going to be very exciting.
Definitely.